Welcome to the Chiefs of Finance Live Lounge with your host, Artie Asadi, and Halcyon Finance and Accounting Recruitment. Join us as we speak to some of the best, brightest, and most successful senior finance leaders across Canada as they share their incredible insights to help guide you on your journey to becoming a senior finance leader. During these sessions, you're going to hear our guests discuss their journeys and offer real advice, guidance, and mentorship to those coming through the ranks and wanting to become directors, VPs, and CFOs.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Chiefs of Finance Live Lounge. Today we're very excited and honored to have Cindy Kraft with us. So for those who may not know, Cindy Kraft is a leading career and personal brand strategist for corporate finance executives. Over the last 16 years, Cindy and her company and website, CFOcoach.com, have been helping clients understand their marketability, articulate their value, and position themselves as the clear and compelling choice. Her client list includes CFOs of private and public corporations, private equity firms, and non-for-profit organizations, as well as other visionary and accomplished senior-level finance executives seeking to position themselves for those really 150,000 plus leadership positions. So, Cindy, we're very honored and excited to have you join us, so thank you.
Thank you, Artie, for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Excellent. So I'm sure I missed out probably a lot of what you do in the last 16 years. You've been, really influential with getting a lot of senior finance executives and leaders into, their current positions or helping them brand themselves as better overall executives as their package and branding. So I would love to hear a little bit, in your own words, your story and how you got to do what you do, and a little bit more background that I may have missed out with the intro.
Okay, well, I actually started in my business in 1995, and about 8 years ago took a branding certification course and decided that I was going to do exactly what I was going to teach my clients to do, and that is understand your branded positioning to a specific target audience and operate exclusively from that position. And so I went through the course, and I, as part of that process, looked at who my clients had been in the past that I most enjoyed working with, and at the market where there was a gap. And while there were a lot of my colleagues who worked with the C-suite across the board, at the time that I did this, the only exclusive career coach and resume writer in the C-suite was the technology. And that's still a foreign field. They have their own speak, and that's great. But there was nothing specifically geared towards finance. I loved working with my finance clients. I'm very right-brained. I'm very analytical. I have developed a process that is really designed to work with how finance people work. And as a result, I decided that's where I was going to plant my flag and raise it and work exclusively with the finance community, specifically the chief financial officers. And so I've been doing that for about 8 years.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm sure you, in that 8 years, you've probably seen many different finance executives from different walks of life. So do you find that the typical person who may come seeking your advice and expertise shares a lot of similar commonalities in their career paths and how they get to you, or is there everyone's sort of different in their approach and their journey to how they get to you?
It's interesting because one of the most common obstacles that people have to branding, more to niching, is that it means that you do the same thing for the same people day in and day out. And I have found that to be absolutely not true. My finance executives, while they are all very accomplished, They come from different places. They have arrived at where they are through different ways. And when you delve into the branding, it's about how you do what you do, not what you do. Because truthfully, your marketability is wrapped up not in what you do, but in how you do it and how you deliver. So the how is really where the differentiation comes in, and why all of my clients are very different. They have different strengths, different abilities, different track records of success, different sweet spots. And so it's very fun to be able to hone in on what they love doing, what they do well, what they want to do more of, and be able to translate that to a value proposition, to a marketing message that is steeped in value of what they love and have a track record of success doing.
Okay, so those are all sort of very very valid points. And so, in that aspect, then, how would you, if someone came to you, either in their job or they've left their job or they're, currently employed, working on ungodly number of working hours in their job, and they've by necessity had to shelve their managing their career, and then they finally realize, the realization kicks in that their job is their life, and they're, I need to rebrand myself, I need to reimage myself. How would someone go about boosting that brand and credibility?
And that's a common problem that my CFOs face. If you read my website, it speaks directly to that, and almost 50% probably of the prospects who call me say, your website says, I've worked so hard and so long and have put in so many hours in my job that I've neglected my career. So it is a very common situation in the C-suite, but I think particularly with, I call them the chief everything officers today, which is the new CFO. He is responsible for so much more than he was 10 years ago. So what it means, Artie, is that my CFOs have to make a decision that their career is important and that they are going to invest the time in doing what they need to do in order to further their career and be able to find those opportunities, draw those opportunities, look further than what the day or what the week or what the month and what the company needs, and really look at, okay, where do I want to be? Realistically today, a CFO should count on 9 to 12 months of searching before they actually land that next great opportunity. Mm-hmm. So for a passive candidate, which is the employed, but looking but not desperately looking, they are in the great position of being able to take their time, do it right, do it well, and rather than accepting the next opportunity out of desperation, be able to accept the right opportunity out of personal preference and desire to land where they want to land, not where they need to land. So the first thing they need to do is really make the commitment to the time and effort. And once they do that, then it becomes a matter of executing good career management habits. How do they continue to work a job but also spend time in their career on some kind of constant and consistent basis? Constant and consistent can look different for every candidate depending on their job, depending on their imminent move situation, but constant and consistent is what is key to them being able to create a passive and proactive strategy that is 24/7 and executable regardless of how busy they are.
Mm-hmm. And so would you be kind enough to share a couple of those, I'm sure for those listening, some real tactical strategy, and strategic things they could be doing? Is this more towards an online profile, social media, LinkedIn, networking? What are some of the things someone who may be working 60-hour weeks, 60-plus-hour weeks, how do they commit to this, making branding a necessity and part of their career management?
I always tell my clients they have to put it on their calendar, just like every other appointment, and then honor it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on a to-do list where it gets pushed from one day to the next week. It is a weekly appointment with yourself. And so it does involve all of those things that you mentioned, Artie. First and foremost, it's critically important that the candidate understands their value messaging. If you don't have a value message, if you don't know what your value is, if you only know what your duties and responsibilities are, then it means that you're not a very competitive candidate and you're going to have a lot of difficulty doing any of those things. Writing your resume, creating a LinkedIn profile, gaining visibility among your target audience, because if you look like everybody else, you're merely a commodity. I liken it to, I'm a big college football fan, particularly SEC. And so I tell my clients to think about the game of football. And you have two teams, but in this analogy, both teams are dressed in exactly the same uniform. Offense and defense, same uniform. They're all stuffed into the 10-yard end zone. You can't tell who's on whose team. You can't really identify offense or defense. And you can really only see, the team players who are in your line of vision depending on where you're sitting. Everybody else is just a mob. That is very much what happens in the job search process. Mm-hmm. Candidates don't try to differentiate themselves. They try to do what everybody else is doing. And so consequently, they all look the same. There's nothing distinguishing. There's nothing differentiating. You're in a commodity mob stuffed into 10 yards along with every other candidate. Meanwhile, there's 100 yards of playing field and another end zone, and nobody's there. Mm-hmm. So your goal as a candidate is to get out of the 10-yard end zone with every other candidate and move into that playing field with your value message that is differentiated and distinctive and allows you to be wearing a neon sign. So before you can do anything, you have to figure out what your value is as a problem solver. And then trust in that place, being a problem solver who does a specific kind of thing to a specific target audience. Mm-hmm. And that's where you become very powerfully positioned as a competitive candidate.
Yeah, no, certainly that's so key in terms of being able to differentiate yourself and offer how you'll be able to offer value and in a sea of 250 plus candidates who have probably already applied for that position as well, and how do you really make yourself stand out? Hey, with that value and being a problem solver, would you say it's more important to relate that to real tangible stuff, experience that you've done on the job, or in terms of more on the personality side? How would someone go about maybe creating a value proposition? Where do they need to look first? Is it within themselves? Is it on their resume?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, obviously, we are talking here, so you need to be a problem solver from a corporate perspective. How have you into a situation or an issue, resolved a challenge, and made it better, and also delivered a bottom line impact, and even perhaps a longer term positioning for the company that they would not otherwise have. So, oftentimes in a person's career, they can do something really well. They have a skill and they excel at that skill. But the bottom line is they hate doing that particular skill. From a corporate perspective, your boss notices and they say, oh, this candidate does this really well. Let's promote him to do more of this thing. And you hate this thing, so it's called a burnout skill. You get promoted to do more of it, and pretty quickly, you don't want to be at that company anymore because you're doing something you don't like to do, even though you do it well. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to not just look at what you do well, but what you love doing and do well. Mm-hmm. Have a track record of success doing through that lens of being a problem solver.
Mm-hmm. Certainly it all seems to come back to being able to showcase and through your value proposition and maybe your resume how you are a problem solver and how you're able to essentially make the board's or the CEO's life easier coming into that position as a chief of finance, essentially. So, Cindy, on your following your work and reading a lot of what you do, you talk about the authentic branding, essentially who you think you are versus how others perceive you to be. Are you able to talk a little more exactly what that means and how you could relate that to creating an overall brand? And is this more to do with being self-aware of your positives and self-limitations?
There's a lot of confusion about branding. It's a very interesting perspective that has risen over the past 8 years. So 8 years ago, branding wasn't even on a finance executive's radar screen. They didn't know what it was. They didn't want to talk about it. It just wasn't something that they were interested in doing or knowing. Fast forward to now, and almost without fail, every time a prospect calls me, the first thing they say is, I would like to have branded position. And so I'll ask them, well, what does that mean to you? What does branding mean to you? Most times, they do not know. They do not understand the concept of branding. They have heard the word. They know that it's important, but they don't really understand the true concept of branding, let alone authentic branding. So branding is not who you believe yourself to be in isolation. Rather, authentic branding is who you believe yourself to be as it aligns with others' perspective of you. So, for example, if you as a finance leader think that you are a brilliant visionary, but when asked, all of your team members say, oh my goodness, he is the most micromanaging person I have ever worked for, then who is that finance leader really? He's only a visionary leader in his own mind. That's not who he is. And so it's really important to not just put something out there that you believe to be true about yourself in isolation. Because if you're the only one that believes it, you're going to have a hard time selling it. So with my clients, I will often do a 360 assessment. And unlike the corporate 360s, which I always call 180 because really you're only surveying your bosses and your peers and maybe your direct reports, this 360 is a true 360. You do all of those, but you also go outside to customers or clients, to board members, to past employers, past people you worked with, colleagues, friends, family, people that you might go to church with, anybody who knows you really well and could speak to your top leadership qualifications, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your key attributes. That's what we survey on. And so what that does, and you also take a self-assessment, so what that does is it allows us to lay your self-assessment alongside all of the data that was gathered from people who know you well, and really hone in on that intersection of what you believe to be true as well as what others believe to be true about you, and create a strong, authentic branding positioning from that place, because that's the truth of your authentic branding. So it's a fun process. A lot of my clients love doing it. Actually, the people who do the assessment, which takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes, really love doing the assessment. Mm-hmm. And my clients end up with about a 35-page report that has pulled all of this data together to be able to be analyzed. So that's the brand aspect. But in isolation, it only tells you the branding piece. So you also have to have the problem-solving piece. The problem-solving is the value messaging, and the branding is the how you do it, which is wrapped around problem-solving ability. So people solve problems in different ways. You can't be a problem solver in isolation. The branding allows us to really look at how you do problem solving, which speaks to corporate culture. And when you answer the corporate culture question, you will often, assuming that you are a qualified candidate, easily make the cut.
Gotcha. Okay. So those all really make sense, and you brought up a lot of really key points in regards to kind of tying it all together and creating an overall branding image for yourself. So I would assume people listening to this call thinking, it's going to be really great doing this assessment and, in theory, being able to find out what others think of me. But how could someone go about really getting a true assessment from someone who may have something different they want to say to that CFO or finance leader, but may necessarily not want to, be overly critical? Are there any tools or steps that this individual could take to really get that authenticity from that individual giving the feedback?
And that's the beginning of the 360 assessment, Artie. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to go to somebody, even when you do internal 360s. It's pretty easy to figure out who said what. This 360 assessment is web-based, and so send out to your list of recipients the assessment and ask them to do it. All the responses are confidential, and they go back to a web server that compiles the data and gives you an analysis. And so people can feel very comfortable and free to speak the truth, because obviously if there is something that you're not doing well or not doing at all that is an impediment to your career climb and you don't know about it, you can never fix it. Mm-hmm. So soliciting this feedback and being able to tap into people who know you well and get their honest feedback about strengths, weaknesses, leadership competencies, and key attributes really provides you with great data and information and power to either continue on the course that you're on because you're spot on, or to be able to say, you know what, I'm almost there, but I'm lacking here, or I'm not doing this well, or this perception isn't what I would like it to be. And so here's my action plan to be able to begin to alter that perception to more in alignment of what I would like it to be as a finance leader. Mm-hmm. It is very difficult to get that information if you don't have some sort of a tool that can offer confidentiality in the recipient's ability to respond honestly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, terrific. Yeah, no, that's it's a really excellent tool in the sense that provides the confidentiality, so the person on the other end doesn't need to feel they're being overly critical, and really provide that timely feedback to the finance leader. And this is something that you guys do at the CFO coach you mentioned.
That's
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, no, we'll link up everything, your website, www.cfo-coach.com, and your contact information at the end. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, they could absolutely do that. Now, moving along, so all those assessments and tools are fantastic, and a great way to do it. But if someone wants to try and go on their own, and try and create a branding profile and differentiators across social media, I would think we would all agree LinkedIn is the most prominent for the executives. What would be some of the steps that someone could start with, in terms of profile, picture, engagement? What are some things that you find work really well?
So one of the most important things has to do with cohesiveness. Oftentimes what happens is there's not a cohesive value message that runs through all of your documents, your presence, or your verbal message. So, for example, I think finance executives probably have some of the worst LinkedIn profiles that I have ever seen. Most of them are very incomplete. They would be hard pressed to get a recruiter to even respond to what they see because they're so sparse.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, there's not a cohesive message between their resume and their LinkedIn profile, or even their verbal message in a networking situation. So let's say, for example, that this very qualified, because almost always the finance executives that I speak with, it isn't that they aren't qualified, it's that they don't understand how to market themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so this very accomplished, very qualified CFO is at a networking event, and he has a great verbal message. And that message, he's either talking to a recruiter, or he's talking to a prospective employer, or his contact information gets passed on to a prospective employer, and he's asked for a resume. Or he has a business card with his LinkedIn profile on it. So the person goes and looks at his LinkedIn profile and says, this person doesn't even look like the person that I spoke with the other night. Or receives a resume, and the resume is nothing at all resembling who the person spoke with.
Mm-hmm.
Or conversely, the resume is the first thing that a recruiter sees, and picks up the phone and talks to the candidate, and the candidate is horrible and nothing like is what is represented on paper. That has broken more opportunities than I could even begin to tell you. There must be cohesiveness from what you say and to whom you say it, to your resume, to your LinkedIn profile. All of them must resonate with value, and your conversation always has to come from that place of value. Mm-hmm. So with that said, yes, for a senior finance executive, resume is critically important. LinkedIn profile is critically important. Mm-hmm. On that LinkedIn profile, it's important that your profile be complete. That means you have a picture, you have a headline that is not your job title, you have a summary that maximizes the 2,000 character limitation that you're given. The experience section is complete. You have recommendations. You have skills that other people have recommended you. and you belong to groups. All of those are extremely important to having a robust profile as well as a very good network of people in your LinkedIn profile.
Okay. Those, again, very, very relevant points that you speak about. And what about the engagement piece? Do you think this is more as an extension to their resume and their profile, or do you see engagement? Oftentimes, it's hard to be too engaged because those people you want to network with may not necessarily always be on LinkedIn. But how important is the interaction in the groups? How important is it to be posting regularly? Just an overall engagement on the platform. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I speak a lot to this issue because I run a CFO only group. And I have over 2,000 CFOs, and they are the most quiet bunch of people that you will ever find.
Right.
So, you know what? LinkedIn allows you to join 50 groups. Being in 50 groups is great because it really raises your visibility. You don't have to participate in 50 groups, but I always encourage my clients to participate in at least 2 to 3 that are really good conversations among people in order to showcase their thought leadership to prospective companies and recruiters who might be in that group. If you walked into a networking meeting with a brown paper bag on your head and you walked up to the nearest wall and you just stood there for the whole networking meeting, then pretty much you have wasted your time even going to that meeting. Nobody knows you, nobody has seen you, and you haven't met anybody or talked to anybody. You wouldn't do that offline, and you shouldn't do it online. Online is just a way for you to expand your visibility to a much greater market without nearly the time investment that face-to-face networking meetings take. So definitely a profile picture. People want to know who they're talking to. And definitely engage. You don't have to be on LinkedIn 24/7. You don't have to be on every day. But you do want to be engaging on some kind of constant and consistent basis in order to raise your visibility as a thought leader who really is a problem-solving candidate of interest.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen some of the individuals that I speak to on a regular basis who, senior finance leaders who are looking for a new position, really be good at this, and in terms of active engagement, posting articles, and commenting on stuff that's happening on LinkedIn. And then on the other end, complete opposite on the other spectrum, people are just very quiet. But, I'm sure you would agree, it's so important, even if you're, as you mentioned, your first point was, even if you're in your job right now, you've got a stable career from, quote unquote, what you feel is stable right now, and you don't see the need to do this. And then, essentially you could have a realization, or the market could do a downturn again. Anything could happen, and you'll find yourself back on the market, and you'll kind of be playing catch up. So that whole point you made in keeping an active engagement level and making a commitment to yourself to just do something, even a few steps, few things a day, one thing a day, just to keep your visibility and your profile up.
And you make an excellent point, Artie. The worst time to conduct a job search is when you need one because you're a desperate job seeker. The best time to be in job search mode, and really you should always be in job search mode. You should always have a visible presence that is drawing recruiters with the opportunities that you'd like to hear about towards you. And the very best time to do that, when you have the most marketing bang for your buck, is when you are a passive candidate. You are happily, gainfully employed and not in active job search mode. That makes you a very appealing, desirable, and hunted candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't exist, if your LinkedIn profile is a name and CFO in the experience section and nothing else, you can continue to be happily and gainfully employed until that potential disaster happens, but nobody knows about you. You're not getting those opportunities. And again, 9 to 12 months is a realistic time frame for securing your dream position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, you could be doing that 9 to 12 months, but, on a very limited, even if you start on a very limited scale, if you're gainfully employed right now, just, getting yourself out there and engaged. Now, what do you say to people who may feel, oh, I don't want to become too involved or change my profile? My employer is going to think that I'm jumping ship. I don't want to raise any attention. How would someone go about that, explaining themselves in terms of, creating a profile and becoming more engaged and active?
Yeah, I think offense is your best defense. So for my CFOs, I will always say, if you have a concern about it, I would go to my CEO and I would say, LinkedIn is a great networking platform. It's a great way to raise the visibility of our company and the corporate officers within the company. I'm beefing up my profile, and I actually think the whole C-suite should do that. So I'm taking the lead on this. And I actually have a funny story. One of my clients, as part of the process, he did beef up his LinkedIn profile, and corporate counsel, outside counsel, happened to see that his profile was updated and went to the CEO and said, I don't know why he updated his profile, but he might be in job search mode and we can't lose him. And so you need to call him into this office and you need to give him a big raise because we need him to stay.
Awesome.
And so that's exactly what happened. The CEO called him in and said, you know what? You're doing a great job. We think that you need more money, and so we're giving you this big fat raise. And they did.
Right.
And
that's great.
He stayed for a while longer. But, it's a concern. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how you handle it is very important. Reality says today that every senior executive should have a robust profile on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you do that when you're not in job search mode, it causes a lot less issues, particularly if you go on offense in doing it.
Okay. Yeah. No, definitely makes sense, and that's we got some echo going on, and really interesting story you had there. I guess it's great on too. I mean, good for the employer to take a proactive stance and try and hold on to the individual, but I guess it's that saying, once the individual has sort of checked out, sort of in essence, out of a position, even if you throw more money at them, essentially it's never going to work in the long term. It comes down to my understanding and viewpoint on it too.
Sure. If it's not a good fit and you've made the decision to move at some point,
right,
you're still going to move.
That's right.
The other thing that I would caution folks who are listening to this, who are planning to beef up their profiles, and I would encourage you to beef up your profile, is that you want to turn off the activity broadcasts while you are making those substantial and significant changes to your profile. You can turn it back on when you're finished, so that then as you update maybe awards that you've gotten or certifications that you've achieved or additional groups that you've joined or whatever, people can know about that. You can drive traffic constantly back to your profile that way. But when you are doing significant upgrades, you want to turn that activity broadcast off, because you don't want everybody in your network to see that you are beefing up your profile. You just want it to be a done deal.
Okay. Absolutely. No, those are really, really good valid points. And there's a few different feeds that are there under your settings, but yeah, very simply just turn them off in terms of updating your profile and sort of engagement level and possibly the people you're connecting with. If you don't, you're connecting with other hiring managers or recruiters, then if you don't want to have anyone see that on the main page, then yeah, simply turn it off. So again, very good point. So Cindy, I'd like to spend the last few minutes possibly talking about the resume. We talked a lot about the profile being an extension of the resume. What are some key points that you could give to the individual who wants to really stand out on the resume?
First and foremost, value messaging from a problem-solving perspective. I know that sounds like a dead horse that I'm beating, but really I can't emphasize enough. It is not what you do. It's not responsibilities that you've held. It's how you've delivered that matters. So in a resume, I only write 2-page resumes for my CFOs. Doesn't matter how many years of experience they have. If I can't set a hook in 2 pages, then I have not done my job. Mm-hmm. But reality is, in a resume, the top half of the first page is the most high value real estate. If I haven't sold them in that space, then I have not done my job. So typically with finance, it's still a very conservative industry, and doing something wild and different in your resume to gain attention, unless it has value, is not going to impact. So you can stay conservative in your approach, recognizing that finance is still a very conservative industry, but you can front load value into your resume. Mm-hmm. The reverse chronology resume still rules the day. Mm-hmm. And you can keep the reverse chronology format, but you can still front load the top half of the first page with value first. It's not about keywords. It's about how you used keywords to deliver value. So in writing your resume, succinct is very important. White space is very important. If you list 8 bullets and they are a combination of responsibilities held and end results, and there's no white space, very unlikely anything is going to be seen. Mm-hmm. So really important, have a value message, front load your resume with value, provide lots of white space. Your resume is a hook. It's designed to get somebody who needs your ability to pick up the phone and call you. You don't have to tell everything. You have to tell enough. And you have to tell enough through the lens of being a problem solver who delivers impacts.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that all makes... Sorry about that echo. That all makes excellent sense, and really tying that back to the whole value piece and differentiating yourself. And absolutely, the 2-page. I know sometimes when you become an executive, it's so hard. You want to cram everything in there and talk about everything you've done, but essentially after the 2 pages, it's sort of dead real estate. No one's really looking at it too much. It's that first page that really has to grab the individual's attention. And if you do a really good job on that first page, then really entice the hiring manager or the recruiter to keep on reading and find out more about you.
So let me just add something to that, Artie. There are 2 times your resume is in play. The first is if you use it as a first line of introduction, meaning you're doing a direct mail campaign either to companies or to recruiters. At that point, it's an initial scan. The top half of the first page is critically important. If you don't sell them in that 10 to 12 second time frame, they're not going to look any further. 2-page resumes are great because they can sell a lot of value. If you front load it, it can either entice a recruiter to say, okay, there's enough value here, I'm picking up the phone, or there's so much value here, I want to read more. in either case, you've answered that question. Then there's the case where the resume is not the first line, but maybe a second line. So that would be a case where a recruiter has looked at your LinkedIn profile, and it should not duplicate your resume. I do not even recommend uploading your resume to LinkedIn. If you do, there's no reason for a recruiter to call you. Rather, you should think about your LinkedIn profile and your resume and even your cover letters as being building blocks. They all build on each other. You have so much that you bring to the table that they're just all resonating value on their own. They could be standalone documents because they are so value rich. But the recruiter sees your LinkedIn profile, calls you, has a conversation, and asks for your resume. Now, this is different. In the first scenario, it was, how can I exclude this person? In the second scenario, where they've asked for your resume after a conversation, they're looking for opportunities to include you. And so while I do write 2-page resumes for my CFOs, I also offer them the opportunity to have a leadership brief as part of their arsenal. A leadership brief can be unending number of pages and is very detailed in laying out their thought leadership, initiatives that they have executed, envisioned, or at least been a part of, how they executed, what that bottom line impact was, and how that positioned the company to do something it couldn't otherwise do. In the scenario where their LinkedIn profile was found and a resume was requested, now they can look at their leadership brief and say, you know what, these 2 or 3 initiatives speak exactly to the problems that this company is having, and include that as part of the transmission. Again, now they're looking for reasons to include that candidate as a viable, credible candidate, and more is better. So the 2-page resume, that's that hook. But when it comes to adding credibility and really dumping on the value, that leadership brief can be a very solid, differentiating, even deal-breaking part of the overall process.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's something that, again, you feel someone should be able to write for themselves, or seek expert advice and really highlighting their capabilities. Is there a sort of format in terms of the leadership portion that you highlight that they should be following?
No, I'm not a format drives what I do. I'm all about, okay, this client brings this strength, so I'm going to use this strategy to really present them as well as I can. Format should never be the determining factor of your writing. It should always be, here's what I do well. Here's the strategy that I'm going to use to promote it. As far as whether you self-write or you hire somebody, I think there are a couple of things that one should consider. First of all, finance people are notoriously bad self-marketers. They don't know how to promote themselves. So if you're a great writer and you're great at marketing yourself, by all means, go for it. But if you're not, why would you risk not being able to put forth your best first impression by thinking that you have to do it? So if you would stand in front of a mirror and cut your own hair, then great, do it, and maybe it will turn out well. Same way, if you're a great writer and you're a great marketer, by all means do it. But if you aren't, then the same way that your company has a marketing department, because not everybody is a marketer, hire somebody to help you. And this goes back, Artie, to my statement about cohesiveness. You want to make sure that if you hire somebody to write your documents, that they are writing from your authentic voice. Mm-hmm. Again, somebody could create a great resume for you. But if it isn't authentic and you go out and you talk to people and there's a huge disconnect between who you are and what appears on paper, there's going to be a problem. So when you work with someone, you want to make sure that they can write from your authentic voice. That what your resume and leadership brief and cover letters and LinkedIn profile say are all reflective of how you articulate your value. So every person is different, but a lot of times what I see come past my desk is much more harmful and hurtful to their prospect of getting a new job than it is helpful. So if you're looking for a $150,000 plus position, then an investment of several $1,000s to be able to make sure that you can understand your marketing message, put your best foot first, and that all of your documents are cohesive in messaging, then would turn out to be a very worthwhile investment if you can't do it yourself.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you on that point, and my apologies for that echo once again. Now, Cindy, if someone wants to get in touch with you and talk a little bit more, hear more about your services and what you could offer to them, how would they get in touch with you?
They can call me. Phone number is 813-655-0658, or they can email me, Cindy, Cindy, at CFO-coach.com.
Excellent. And as mentioned before, we'll link all those to the page when we load the audio up. And Cindy, so thank you so much for your time today. Is there any parting thoughts that you could leave with those finance executives looking to rebrand themselves? Any final message to those out there looking to be found and differentiate themselves?
If you are looking to be found, if you are looking to be branded and to really leverage your market differentiation, then you have to embrace social media. You don't have to be on it 24/7, but you can't be the greatest and most talented CFO if you can't be found. So make it easy for those people who need what you do and would pay and pay well to get you. Make it easy for them to find you.
Awesome advice. Cindy, once again, thank you so much. And for those listeners on this call today, we'll put the phone number for Cindy, her email address, and her website where you could go and speak to her and research her fantastic ideas and writing and greater details. So Cindy, thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate it.